Hey guys, so as promised, here's the first video. Now, I'm Ariza from Perth Canine Craft, also trading as a B2 support. And again, just to remind you, in this video series, I will share what I have learned about the public access test when I went to Brisbane to be assessed on assessing the public access test. Anyway, doesn't matter. So what we're going to be talking about in this one is the grounds for immediate failure in the public access test. So just like if you go to do your motorcycle license, you lose points as you go, but there's a few points where if you fail those points, it's an automatic fail and you fail the entire test. And this is what we're going to talk about for the public access test. Okay, so number one is a dog that displays inappropriate aggressive behavior. So like showing teeth, growling, raising hackles, snapping teeth, lunging to bite. Okay, now I want you to notice it says inappropriate. The thing is that assistance dogs need to be almost bomb-proof. So we want to look for a dog with a high threshold that's not easily distressed, okay? Meaning your dog can cope with what happens in the real world. Essentially, the public is still quite uneducated, so I'd highly recommend that you guys share some of these videos with people, even if they're not interested in assistance dogs, because they will just randomly touch your dog. You'd have kids running up, regardless whether you're wearing a t-shirt or your dog's wearing a jacket that actually says do not engage, I'm working, don't distract, and all this sort of stuff. So as the public can make it a lot easier for us if they just kind of let us be, because our assistance dogs isn't actually for them. Now, this does not mean that the dog is not allowed to defend itself in an appropriate situation, but remember, again, the public is uneducated. So a skill that I have to teach my handlers is how to advocate. And I actually give my handlers this little business card that they can actually give to members of the public that actually has certain answers to very frequently asked questions. And if they have more, they can always contact me. And that way I kind of take the pressure off my handlers. What else? Oh yeah. So another thing is that if the handler fails to advocate for their dog, that's a big thing. All right, number two, any dog that urinates or defecates in a building. This is a big problem because you must meet a certain hygiene standard. Your dog must be extremely well groomed. They must be in really good health, and they should not be peeing and pooping everywhere. So the easiest thing to do is to actually train your assistance dog that can toilet on command. And the handler needs to learn what their toileting routines is. Now with puppies, this is a little bit easier. Older dogs can be a little harder to teach and put on cue. So you must know and read your dog. You must also learn where are appropriate areas you can take your dog to do it, because that's an immediate fail really. Number three, any dog that displays resource guarding of people, territory, possessions, or food. Now, this is usually a genetic component to most dogs. So these are dogs that feel like they've been robbed, and therefore they will defend their resource that they deem valuable. My dog, Ziva, used to be robbed quite frequently by different dogs and people, and she never became a resource guarder. So that would be a really, really, really good trait to have in a dog. Saying that your dog is protecting you is not valid. Now remember, assistance dogs are not personal protection dogs. They're actually not allowed to scare people away. Okay, that's the thing. So the dog can help you, for example, by blocking people, but they can't use fear to keep people away. In fact, I think if you do have a dog with a lower threshold, it's much more important that you work as a team and you don't actually let your dog decide what is a threat, because they can really just lack proper judgment in our society. So again, the handler needs these skills to know. Number four, any dog or handler who can't or won't meet the public access test's minimum safety and hygiene standards. So meaning that, are you going to bring shame to the organization's reputation, the dog, the trainer, or the assistance animal industry? Every company, organization, or institution must give you a proper identification or evidence. If you don't train with a trainer or you don't train with an organization, you must have evidence that your dog is an assistance dog. If you refuse or you fail to supply it, then any company out there in the public can treat you as your dog is a pet, and they can actually deny you entry. That is actually their legal right. So if you don't have identification, you can't insist on the privilege of entry. The second thing is you need to make sure that you have that evidence with you all the time, okay? And then anything else that we mention in here, if you refuse to comply with that, you'll fail. A little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. A hygiene thing, for example, is if you've got a dog with incontinence, that's not going to be a good assistance dog because they can't help but leak. But that is a hygiene risk to the public. Okay, so I wouldn't even take the dog out, to be honest. Again, the handler needs to learn this. It's just the way it goes. And number 5, any handler who is inappropriately harsh on their dog. Right, now, here's the thing. Harsh can be open to interpretation, and your dog should be either taught the right skills or have the right temperament that will prevent your dog from being such a challenge if you need to be harsh to get the same results, really. So, for example, the dogs I worked with in South Africa, which we had dogs of crowd controls. So South Africa is a bit more of a volatile environment, so we had to have tools to meet that, same harshness and more. So our dogs were extremely sensitive to triggers, but they were a lot more robust when they were under stress, which is really interesting. So they were easily stimulated, but their drive was so intense that it will push them through any adversity. Some of our techniques had to be a little bit more harsher in the moment because they might accidentally, someone who is actually not a threat could just be passing by. It could be a police officer, could be the president, who knows, and perhaps to correct the dog, like they've got tunnel vision, they're not listening as much, they're really focused on their target. We might have to be harsher to actually get the same result. That's not what you need for an assistance dog. If you have to do that, like my dog Ziva is a very high-driven dog, she'll never make it as an assistance dog in that regard. It would take way too much training for such little benefit for both of us to train her to be like that. So I decided she doesn't need to be an assistance dog because I don't need one. So again, if the handler fails to choose a dog with the correct temperament or do the training, they don't do the training, because you can actually teach dogs to respond to less harsher instructions, if you will, to be compliant. If you don't meet the public access minimum safety and hygiene standards, you shouldn't be doing it. Number 6, any handler who is not willing to abide by all relevant laws. Now you need to know the federal law is the king, okay? The state law is the prince and the local law is the mayors. So you need to get to know laws. I will at some point make a video on the different laws in each state of Australia, but that's not my main priority now. And number 7 is the overall hygiene. Your physical appearance and health of your dog is extremely important. Your dog must be well groomed. If it's a scruffy dog, you can still see the difference between a well-groomed scruffy dog and a not so well-groomed scruffy dog. There should not be no obvious injuries. If an assistance dog has injuries and things, they must be put aside to rest. Okay, they shouldn't have obvious lumps, bumps, bruises, blood everywhere, whatever, broken tails, who knows. So any fresh injuries from that dog should be resting, okay? And then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, the toilet routines. So if you refuse to take your dog to appropriate areas, if you just let your dog pee everywhere or poop everywhere, that's a problem and you'll fail. So, like, share, and comment if you found this helpful. I look forward to sharing the next video with you guys next Tuesday. Now here's a challenge for you. The more likes, shares, and comments I get, the more information I am more motivated to provide. And by the way, PS, questions are welcome too, and I'll make some videos to answer that. Talk to you next week.